Hey guys, and welcome to Open Table. We're so glad you're here with us today. We're going through the book of Psalms together, and I just want to encourage you, get involved in the conversation today. You're able to share your doubts and ask questions here. We want you to share open and honestly what you think and feel about God, about faith in the Bible. So again, we're so glad you're here. Let's get started.
So we're studying through the book of Psalms because there's so much that we can learn from the life of David and also the other authors who helped write the book of Psalms. So David in particular, though, he's noted as one of Israel's most effective kings, and some even say he's the greatest king, and others say still that he was a man after God's own heart. And the thing is, though, about David is that he had these ups and downs in his life, that not everything was always going perfect for David. In fact, he had some really dark moments, and he had some really major failures even. And what we like to see in the Psalms is there's this record of David's prayers, of the songs that he would write to God, and these poems that he would write to God. And you can see through the ups and downs of David's life that God is present in every one of those circumstances and in every one of those moments. And David writes so often about the steadfastness of God's love through every situation. And one of the things that you do notice as well is that David sees and he's able to understand clearly in his heart that God is not far off and distant, but God is active and present in every situation. And so in the book of Psalms, we're going to look at chapter 10 today, and we're going to see how to respond to God when it seems like God is distant or far away. So David starts off Psalms chapter 10 in a way that it really grabs my attention personally, and he writes this. He says, "Why, O Lord, do you stand far away? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble?" And so those questions say so much about who David is and like his relationship or his connection to God. Because David has enough of a relationship with God, he has enough of a personal connection to God to ask why. And I think like for me, when I was growing up in church, like I never thought that was something that was acceptable in any way to really question God. Like how could I question the God of the universe? And if I don't understand something, it clearly had to be on me, and I had to kind of internalize that, and there was never really any chance for me to question God. But you see, David, like his connection with God is real, and he's able to speak in a way that's real and it's raw at times, where he's able to even question God. And we see that the way that God responds to David, he's never afraid of our questions, he's never afraid of our doubts, and it's okay. He wants to have a relationship with you and with me that's authentic. This implies that David has an inherent trust in God, that he's saying, even though you're far away, I know you're not gone. Even though it feels like you're far away, I know you're not absent, I know you're real, and I know that you're there. And so why does it seem like in our lives sometimes like God is far away? Because like here's the thing is like when a hard time comes, it's easy to go, where is God? Where is God? Like when school is overwhelming, right? When the homework's piling up, when you're behind in school, when you're getting low test grades, where is God in that moment? Where is God when your friendships dissolve, or the relationship that used to make you so happy, bring you all the joy in the world, right? What happens when that relationship comes to an end? Where's God in that? And like even where is God when you go home and home is chaotic, parents are fighting, or there's just dissension or disagreement within your home? Where is God in that? And so David, like again, he's a man after God's own heart. And what that really means is that he chased after God more than anything else. And so why is he questioning God? You have to ask yourself, like, why is he questioning? So he's not pointing the finger at God. He's not saying, how dare you? But actually, when you want to get to know somebody, you ask them questions, right? When you met someone for the first time, the best way to establish the relationship is to get to know, what are they like? What do they enjoy doing? What do they not enjoy doing? And that's how a relationship is formed, through a series of question asking. And you see David's kind of motive of his heart really is more that I want to deepen my relationship, so I'm questioning you because I can question you and I know you're not afraid, and I'm not pointing my finger like, how dare you? And so when we kind of, like, as we think through that, as we process through that, what about our world? The recent tragedies that we experience every day on the news, somebody's lost their life, and the school shootings, the mass murders, they become commonplace. Like, we're just sort of waiting for the next tragedy to happen. And in those moments, where is God? Does he see? Does he care? Is he there? Is he absent-minded? Is he far away? So take the next couple of moments to discuss this, and remember that it's okay for you to express your doubts and ask questions. So you see, David has started this conversation with God. He's like started a dialogue where he even questions God. He does something that we wouldn't even think to do, and he goes ahead and asks this question: Why do you seem so far off? In hard times, why does it seem like I can't find you? You know, and then so he moves through the chapter, though, through his writing, and he starts to even say that there's injustice that he sees with his eyes. He's seeing people flourish that seem to have evil hearts, and he begins to question God about that. And in verse 4 of chapter 10 of Psalm, he says this: "In the pride of his face, the wicked does not seek him. All his thoughts are, there is no God. His ways prosper at all times. Your judgments are high out of his sight. And as for foes, he puffs at them. He says in his heart, I shall not be moved. Throughout all generations, I shall not meet adversity." And again, we see that we have to remember that David's character, that's the lens that we need to see this through. So he's a man after God's own heart. He's a guy who constantly is striving to know and to please God. And so he's not pointing the finger as he's saying this, but he's saying, like, why does this happen, God? I want to know, I want to understand. And because, you know, he's desired to please and honor God in every way possible, yet he's seeing people who are evil, who have evil hearts, succeeding. And why is that? Have you ever experienced that in your life? Like, you know, maybe you're just the nice guy, right? And you're trying to get the girl, you ask the girl to the dance and she says no. And then you see a week later, she's walking into the dance with some jerk, you know? And you're like, where's the justice, God? I should be the one that's with this girl. Or maybe you're one of those people who you study hard, right? You give it your all, and on test day, you end up with a C, even though you crammed all night the night before. And then you see the slacker to your right, you know, hasn't done anything, barely even awake, and he ends up with an A. Where's the justice and things like that? You know, in our world, there seems to be an overall lack of justice. It seems like the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Like, everywhere you look, you see that there's just this lack of right in the world. And why is it so much harder? Why is it so much harder to do the right thing? Why is it so much harder to be righteous, or so much harder to stand up for something you believe in than it is to do the selfish thing? Why is it so much harder to put others first than it is to put yourself first? Where's the justice in that? Let's take the next couple of moments and talk about that. Okay, so talking about things like this is difficult because it goes against the grain of our culture in such a way that, like, we always like to make it seem like everything's okay. When we talk to other people, when we interact with others, we like to think everything's okay, even though, like, beneath the surface, we really are struggling. And that's like the reason, for example, when you post a selfie to Instagram, like you post it from the best angle possible, when your hair's looking good and your clothes are looking good. You never post the selfie right when you roll out of bed, when your eyes are swollen, you got an old baggy t-shirt with a ketchup stain on it, and you still got bedhead. You know, you don't do things like that. And the reason why, it's kind of the same thing, like why when somebody says, hey, how are you doing? Before they can even finish asking the question, you already have a pre-scripted answer of, I'm doing really good, I'm fine, how are you? But the reality is, like, sometimes we're not fine. Sometimes things are horrible. Sometimes we experience pain, we experience heartache, we experience loss, and there's devastation. And then even on top of that, sometimes, like, we feel like God's not even there in the midst of those things. But I love the way David finishes this psalm. He does it in such a way where it really drives the point home that he's not shaking his fist at God, but rather he's having an intimate conversation with a God that he knows. And in Psalm 10, we're going to pick it up again in verse 16, and it says this: "The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations perish from his land. O Lord, you hear the desire of the afflicted. You will strengthen their heart, and you will incline your ear to do justice to the fatherless and the oppressed, so that the man who is of the earth may strike terror no more. And when you hear that, like you're saying, like David's recounting to himself, God is faithful. God has always been faithful to me, even though I started the psalm by saying, oh Lord, where are you? Why are you far away in times of trouble, right? But really, in reality, he's recounting sort of the history of God and the history of his relationship with God and saying God is faithful and God is there. So here's an area we're going to ask a question now where you could very easily push the churchy answer forward. And I want you to kind of push against that instinct that you have to just say the right answer, okay? Really wrestle with this last question as we conclude our time together today. So in our service that we had previous to this open table discussion, we concluded that when God seems far away, his track record weighs more than my emotions. So when it seems like God's far away, we have to remember who God has been in our lives, who he's been in the lives of other believers, and who he's been to the people in the Bible that we read, and that his track record, his history of coming through, his history of being present in times of trouble outweighs the way I feel. And even though it might feel like he's far away, and we would find if we know the character and heart of God, we know that that's simply not true. And so the Bible gives us just that long, rich history, and we don't always understand or even agree with the way God works. Like we don't always even really think it's the right way. Oftentimes I feel like my way would be better than God's way, but again, his track record has to outweigh my emotions. And through the life of David, we can also learn that God does welcome questions. Remember, David opened Psalm chapter 10 with the question, where are you, God? Why do you hide in times of trouble? And you can see that God is not afraid of our questions, but in the hard times, we actually grow closer to God. And so thank you guys so much for coming to Open Table today. I hope that your discussions have made you think. And if you'd like to talk about things more, remember you can always grab a leader and continue the discussion, or better yet, go with your parents at home and continue the discussion there. Hope to see you next week.